If you aren't willing to be a strong leader, to answer to your staff, to make decisions for people, you're not going to go very far.
Because the visionary is going to have thousands and thousands of ideas, as you visionaries know. And us integrators, we have to choose which ones are worthwhile.
All right, what's up, everybody? We have had a lot of really good presentations today, so I'm going to need everybody to just do a quick favor for me. All right, everybody lean in. And now I want you to lower your standards, okay? Because Clint and Marlon, you guys crushed it. Super excited to be here. Super excited to talk about visionary integrator dynamic. Ben and I are very passionate about this topic. So just real quick, I want to do an exercise as we're getting warmed up. I know we're getting close to lunchtime. We might be a little antsy. That cup of coffee's wearing off. So Clint, thank you for doing that exercise. If you were a visionary, all right, raise your right hand for me. We're going to do a blood oath together very quickly. I will not start another business until I have scaled out of my current one. Thank you. You can put your hands down. If you were an integrator, raise your right hand. Blood oath ready. I will focus on outcomes over process. All right. Classic overthinkers, you integrators. Ben and I have a very, very healthy dynamic, but let's go ahead and get kicked off. To get them out of the way, we're going to post up the vanity metrics. Everybody likes to talk numbers. So here we go. Ben and I this year have done just under 1.2 million in land sales this year. I have a bunch of excuses on why this should be a little bit bigger, but I'll spare you the details. Our gross profits year to date are about 426. And whenever we sent in this deck about a week ago, apparently our pipeline profit for you, Clint, is at about 334. I think we've locked up about 3 contracts since then, but details. So today we're going to be talking about visionary versus integrator, specifically in a land business. And what's really, really important while knowing whether you are a visionary or integrator is to get a layer deeper than that and really know yourself. So guys, I'm going to get really, really vulnerable with you today. Is that okay? Yeah. All right. If I cry, bear with me. I'm an ugly crier. I'm sorry. But first, I want to talk about our partnership, all right? So Ben and I, we're young guys, a lot of young guys in this room. We're 25, going on 26, feel like we're 40 sometimes. But we met just a few years ago at Indiana University. It's where both of us went to college. We were in the business school, so we both had aspirations of getting into big corporate and going on the partnership track and all those things. From IU, we really fostered this relationship where we started talking about business and real estate, way off in the distant future when we're super old in our 40s. No, I'm just kidding for everybody in their 40s and beyond. But, it seems like it's that far off thing. Right? And really cool when we finally got to the working world, because both of us went to the city of Chicago, which is the second picture you see here. I was in consulting. Ben was in corporate accounting for about a year. And I promise Ben will take the mic later. We're going to do little trades off these, all right? So he's not just standing there to make us look good. We met in Chicago where we got to get deeper on our relationship. Ben and I have got a really weird partnership dynamic because we would talk about what we had going on in life. We were super lucky to have been connected pre-COVID because when it happened, we had both just moved. We basically had almost no friends in the areas we were in, and we would meet virtually every week or 2 weeks, and we would talk for 3 hours about all the self-development books we were reading, the business projects we were pursuing, the passions in our lives then. I stumbled into RE Tipster with Seth Williams, if any of you know him, and got one of his YouTube videos on how to make passive income in land. Everyone here knows passive income is the number one priority. It's what we're all doing, right? Everybody here has very passive businesses, right? I'm joking, of course. But I stumbled into the course. 3 weeks later, got my first deal. Ben was listening to this and was like, oh, that sounds cool, okay. So he jumped in. Well, we both had our own issues in our own businesses, and I'll save you some of the details. Over a long enough time horizon, eventually we looked at each other and we said, why don't we just partner up? We had extremely complementary skill sets. And even then, just because we were such good friends, we took it slow, right? And we went steady first. And so what that meant was Ben and I had an interesting relationship where we would use the business that I had started building for marketing budget, and then we would kind of work the deals together, and then had a profit split after. And I'm just going to brag on Ben here for a little bit. He is a classic Andrew Carnegie in my mind. I don't know how many of you know the story of Carnegie, but as Carnegie was coming up, he worked with some people that were on their way up, and not to toot my own horn, but I was on my way up. And what Ben did is he led with value, okay? And he just continued to take things off my plate. So remember, we were working on some deals together, which also meant there were deals we weren't working on together. And I would pop into Pebble. Shout out to Jesse and Kevin. I wish they were still here, but we've been Pebble users for a few years. And I would pop into Pebble and be like, how do all these leads get moved forward? What's going on? And Ben would be like, you just hadn't done anything in a day or two, so I just drove these along. And I'm like, you're not making any money on these, right? He's like, yeah, no, I just can't stand watching you not drive these forward, though, right? So talk about leading with value first. Ben was just classic, always asking for more responsibility, always taking more off my plate. And so, when push came to shove, super exciting. We made it official and recently reincorporated, and now we're 50-50 partners. So just quick round of applause for Ben being a badass. Super fun. So that's kind of our background and our story. Now, here's where I'm going to start to get really vulnerable with y'all. And I want to talk about why vision matters, right? So in case you didn't know, I'm the visionary of the two of us. Ben is our integrator. And I just want to break down why it even matters that you're able to cast a vision. Why do you need to see out into the future? Why does any of that matter for what we're doing? And so this is a picture here in this awesome SpongeBob frame that my family has. That goofy-looking kid on the bottom right is me as a kid. Not sure where I was looking or what I was thinking about. The two other individuals in this photo are my lovely mother and my elder brother. So, not many of you know this about me, but when I was about 9 years old, my father decided to leave. And he sold our house and maxed out all my mom's credit cards and left us homeless. And so we picked up and we moved from Chicago to southern Indiana, where I had an uncle that we crashed with for a little bit until we got back on our feet. And I think back to this frequently, guys, because I don't know how many of you in the room have been so poor and so broke, especially as kids, and just wishing you could do something to help. I was 9 years old. There's not a lot you can do at 9 years old except for show up. I think back to this frequently, and I just wonder, how did my mom with, the $80,000 of credit card debt my dad got to rack up on her behalf, and no home and a failing business, show up every single day? It's because she had a vision. She knew that wasn't it. I don't know if anybody here is a Steve Harvey fan. All of a sudden, I've seen all these motivational talks from Steve Harvey lately. Maybe some of you, yeah? He's got this really good quote. I don't know if he coined it or not, but he says, if you're going through hell, why stop? You're in hell. Keep going. That's exactly what my mom did, is she kept going. And so as a 9-year-old, I watched it modeled for me to see the future, to see a better life for not only yourself, but for others. She didn't want my brother and I to be exposed to the shit life we were living, and worked as hard as she could to get us out of it quickly. And so I just remember as a kid, as I was growing up, I always said, I will never let my family feel powerless again. Never. And so we'll fast forward to today. This is a picture of me and my mom just a few months ago in August. She had to head out to the Nepalese embassy, and I accompanied her. So this is us in the Capitol building, much better than some of the other pictures you may see on the internet about the Capitol building. But it was a really cool trip because, as you can imagine, when we were growing up, we didn't travel much at all. And my mom definitely has traveled least out of all of us. And so I got to take her on this trip. And I'm grateful to say I'm at a place in life now where she did not have to pull out her credit card, debit card, cash for anything. I wouldn't allow it. It was great. Fantastic. And I'm not trying to brag on the fact that I'm this great son that's been helping my mom, but I could not have gotten here without her vision and now mine to carry this forward. I'll tell just one more quick story, and then I promise we'll get into the meat of visionary integrator dynamic. My mom actually just left. Our family's from Nepal, so if you don't know where that is, it's where Mount Everest is, small country between China and India. And she just went back. Well, my brother and I came together, and we just pulled some money together and just handed her $5,000 right before she left, and we said, have a good time. And like, you couldn't do that if you didn't build a business for yourself or allow yourself to cast that vision to say, I want to help my mom. How do you pay somebody back for what she did? I mean, everybody here has been through some form of hell, and if you haven't, it's coming, I'm sorry. But to be able to push through it is something, unfortunately, not a lot of people are able to do. And so vision is something that I hold in high esteem, and I just think it is so important to continue driving your life forward. All right, now we'll dive into some meat. What the hell is a visionary, right? A lot of us have this pie in the sky terminology of somebody that sits up and gets to make these executive decisions and be the guy in charge and never have to work or pick up the phone or do anything, right? That's what we think it is. But in reality, it's somebody with a lot of these traits. They have to be a strong leader, okay? Super, super important. I'll get into this a little bit deeper later. But as a visionary, you're typically where the buck stops, okay? And so if you aren't willing to be a strong leader, to answer to your staff, to make decisions for people, you're not going to go very far, all right? It's important to have big ideas. This is the fun part, right? We get to sit back and have these pie-in-the-sky ideas of what we want to do. But not everybody's capable of thinking as big as, truthfully, all of us are capable of. I mean, life is long. Gary Vaynerchuk's always yelling at me that I'm going to live to be like 700 years old or something. And so if that's the case, our money should be able to compound quite a few times. So it's important that, we not only think that far ahead, but instead of thinking about just what you're capable of in the next 3 months, 12, 18, but to be able to say, what do I want 10 years from now to look like? What type of business do I want to own in 20 years, right? And to be able to build for that. You have a lot of ideas, not just the big ones, but you have a lot. And we'll get into why it's important for the integrator to kind of filter through those. Typically, your visionaries are relationship-based people. Like if you told me, Ajay, today what you are doing is you're going to sit down at a Denny's or a coffee shop, and for the next 16 hours, you've got 1 hour chats with investors that you're just going to get to learn about their lives intimately and how you can provide mutual value to each other, I would be a kid at Disney World. I just love getting to learn what makes people tick and how we can help each other. And if we haven't connected yet, please hit me up because I would love if there was some way I could provide you value, all right? You got to be a creative problem solver. We'll get more into that here in a little bit. I want to make sure we keep moving along. And you got to be a strong salesperson, not only for you, but for your team as you scale. Dennis, where's Dennis? This guy is awesome. Sell ice to an Eskimo. Make your grandma sell their land for $10. This guy knows what it takes. But it takes a lot. It takes a village to get other people to be good at that. It's one thing to foster the skill for yourself. It's another to raise leaders in that, all right? And you have to be somebody who's willing to grow and build both in yourself, in your business, yada, yada, yada. I'm talking too much. I'm going to try to keep this moving. So, main responsibilities for a visionary. Number one is to solve today's problems, okay? So, Ben and I know he's going to get into this a little bit, we frequently sit down and say, what's the bottleneck of the business? What is our issue today? What do we need to work on? And the next week, that's what we work on. It's as simple as that, right? Because otherwise, you kind of have a risk of, well, I'll get into the pitfalls here in a bit, but we just need to be focused on solving today's problems, okay? Now, this is what's really important, is you as a visionary need to you have to choose which problems you're going to solve in the future. What does that mean, right? Well, if you told me, hey, I want to make $1 million a year, great. I mean, Clint just came up here and showed us you could do one deal and make $1 million a year, which is very different than what Rylan presented on yesterday of, great, I'm going to send out, this guy's data-driven and running the numbers and has you do X, Y, and Z, right? But it's which problem do you want to solve? Do you want consistent deal flow? Do you want to swing for bigger deals, right? But you got to choose that. You have to choose which problem you want to solve and reverse engineer to be able to do that. So it's an intentional decision by visionaries. And last, you got to build strategic relationships. What does that mean? If you're in the land business, we need money, right? Funding partners. How are you going to manage that? We need different operators that we work in and we do deals together. Joe DeRazio is somebody who I'm looking at right now. And if you don't know him, watch out, this guy's coming. He approached me on the internet out of nowhere a few months ago and was like, hey man, I've got this deal, I don't know what to do. Can you help me lock it up? And I was like, where did you come from? Through the cracks of the internet. And this guy just pushed through every roadblock on this deal possible. We were able to work together on it, partnered on it, split the deal, and we both walked away with a $26,000 check, right? This guy is already building strategic relationships and led with value first. Said, I need help, you want a piece? I was like, sure, man, let's do it. Watch out, guys, this guy's coming. So here's some big pitfalls of a visionary. Here are things to watch out for. If you're a visionary, please, 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 please pay attention, all right? Number one is scaling yourself out too quickly. This is so sexy and so appealing, and particularly important for like our smaller business operators that are like, I'm gonna get out. And what we do sometimes is we like hire somebody and then we kick our feet up, right? Because we're out of the day-to-day. Because the day-to-day is our nightmare sometimes as a visionary. I hate recurring meetings on our calendar. Ben is well aware I hate recurring meetings on my calendar. But they're necessary, right? And sometimes you just got to look and say, okay, what business am I running right now? What are we trying to grow for? What do I need to do as the visionary to invest in that business? So just be careful of scaling yourself out of the process too quickly. Make sure a process exists, it's trainable, teachable, coachable, and you can build on it, right? Good business is built on process, and people can kind of move in and out. Now, this is a super long conversation I don't want to get too deep into, but next, shiny object syndrome. Anybody here ever had shiny object syndrome? Obviously, because we're all in this room, and land was that shiny object at one point in time. Just happened to work out, right? So, super important. Earlier, I said we have to choose which problems we want to solve for. And sometimes you get some stupid Facebook ad or Instagram or TikTok or whatever you kids are doing these days, and you're like, oh man, how cool would it be if I was in payment processing instead? How interesting would an e-commerce business be? Should I just go raise $20 million tomorrow, right? You got to ask yourself, what problem am I solving? And reverse engineer that. And so super important that we don't get distracted by shiny object frequently, and you got to have your integrator to hold you accountable to that. All right, everybody say accountability. If you have an integrator in your business, you need to give them permission to chew your ass out, okay? And I can't tell you how many times I've come to Ben and I'm like, dude, this is gonna work, we're gonna be rich, and he says no. And I'm like, really? And he says no. And I'm like, dude, but listen, and he says no. And so it's really, really important you have an integrator who's willing to filter through your shiny object and pick out some of the best ideas. Now, that being said, obviously there's like healthy debate in there and good conversation. And here's a big pitfall is creating new problems. So fun fact about us visionaries, a lot of us, have you ever taken PI before? A lot of us are mavericks. I'm looking at Jesse Bibby because he's a big PI guy. He knows all about that stuff. And we have this thing we do where when things are peaceful, right? When like for the first time ever, our team's just like working and wires are coming in and we're making money all of a sudden, you know, the thing we wanted. We just create new problems in our lives. Has anybody ever done that before? You ever just like been happy with where you're at, so you just start a new business or work on some project you shouldn't be doing or underwrite a bunch of deals you shouldn't be looking at because your team's working on them, or even worse, you distract your team by just throwing a bunch of shit at them, right? And become the chaos and the, Clinton and I always call it the tornado effect. You just come in and you tornado everything, right? And so you got to be careful of creating new problems, right? Again, ask yourself, what problem am I solving? What are we doing? How are we going to get there? Oh, and last, I mentioned this a little bit. Sometimes I just don't want to show up. You ever wake up some days and just like don't feel like doing the things? You like don't want to talk to your team. You don't want to solve that problem, do that thing. Well, guess what? Neither does anybody else. So like I keep saying this. I think my generation is some of the laziest people I've ever come into contact with. And Ben and I are always talking about how we're just going to clean up, you know? And so, hey, if you don't want to show up, no worries, more for me. But on those days, Just have people to hold you accountable. Remember earlier we said accountability? Set up those frameworks for yourself. Set up good people in your life. Set up good process to show up. And let the people chew you out when you don't. Know how to prioritize to make sure you're solving for the right problems, showing up to the right meetings, building the business that you want to build. Oh, this is a good one. I forgot I put this in here. Being willing to roll up your sleeves. So again, as visionaries, we want to scale out of the business. But sometimes you got to get dirty. Sometimes we got to get back in the weeds. Sometimes things are broken and you forget you're the best salesperson or you're the best marketer. Just because you hired people in the business doesn't mean they don't go off track every now and then. We're all people and we make mistakes and we falter. And you are the visionary. So you need to make sure we are driving towards the vision in the business, right? And to do that, you just got to be willing to roll up your sleeves and get dirty and make the 200 cold calls and go do the things. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to my partner, Ben.
Great stuff, Ajay. Great stuff. Thanks, everybody. Let's give a hand for our visionaries, please. All right, so every yin needs a yang. And the yin to the yang of the visionary is the integrator. So, I'm a very intense motherfucker. If you've met me, you already know that. And that's what you need in an integrator. I love competition. I love to win. I hate to fucking lose. But I love to play the game. I'm gonna show up every day to make sure I'm playing that goddamn game, right? I think of great partnerships. I think of Alex Hormozi and Layla Hormozi. I think of Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. And they are greater as a team than they would be by themselves. 1 + 1 does not equal 2. 1 + 1 equals 3. This man over here is an amazing visionary. I love him with all my heart, and we could not be more different in many, many ways, but we share so many values. I know the man he wants to become, the family he wants to build, the husband, the father, the son, the brother he wants to be, and I get to help him be that by being his business partner. The money we make allow him to do what he gets to do for his mom and completely change the trajectory of his family's life. That's powerful. That gives me meaning. One of the things I'm most self-conscious about is that I had my own land business. I started it the summer of 2021. I never even closed a single transaction. I'm self-conscious about that. But it's gonna be one of the best things that I ever did was shutting down that business because I got to work with this man. I get to be his part. It's a privilege for me every single day to be his visionary because he's a world-class visionary, right? Integrator's role. What do I do? The visionary is the face of the franchise. Most of you in this room know Ajay. You've seen him. Have you seen me before? Probably not. I'm okay with that. I love that shit. I'm okay being behind the scenes. I'd rather be on the Zoom calls. I would rather most people don't know me because I love working in silence like a silent wolf, right? I'm okay with that. But we have to work as an integrator to make sure that the visionary's vision becomes a reality. I think of it as like a ship. We're moving the ship, but we only make tiny tweaks as the integrator on a daily basis. Because the visionary is going to have thousands and thousands of ideas, as you visionaries know. And us integrators, we have to choose which ones are worthwhile. We have to delegate responsibilities to the correct person, and that means working with the team effectively on a daily basis. We have to focus on the day-to-day operations of the business, and that comes down to the day-to-day meetings. And we have to be a filter for the visionary, like I said. Now, this is extremely important because the visionaries don't want to do the day-to-day details. The stuff that Ajay was leaving was not because he was poor at doing those tasks, but because they don't give him energy. He wants to be here. He wants to get to know you. He wants to help you in your business to help you grow as a person and a business person, right? That's his creative genius. I get to help him unlock that creative genius. That's a privilege for me. And lastly, as the integrator, you have to swallow your pride a little bit. You're not going to be the number one. I had to realize that I am a much better number two than I am a number one, and I'm going to embrace that for the rest of my life. Because a lot of people never come to that understanding and try to put a square peg in a round hole. But I'm much more comfortable being in the position I am, and that makes me much better, and that makes Ajay much better in his role as well. What makes an integrator? So, this is 7 or 8-year-old Ben, and I go into a classroom to take a test to being gifted and talented. I come from an academic family, so I figured, I'm a shoo-in for gifted and talented, right? Failed that exam, wasn't gifted and talented at all. But I've always had this irrational self-belief that I could be the best. I don't know where it came from, but it's always served me well. So those nights I had to work twice as hard, 3 times as hard to get in those classes. And I got in those classes. By high school, I was in all the honors classes, and the kids that didn't have to study, they were just supernaturally gifted at academics, they didn't have to study. That's cool. For me to make the same grades, I would have to stay up till midnight, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, and be ready for those exams to show up and get those same grades, because I believed that I could get those same grades, even if I didn't have the natural talent. So now today as an integrator, how does that serve me? Well, now I have that 10-year-old kid that stayed up all those nights wondering, what is this for? I get to serve that kid now. I get to show him what it was all meant for because of the business we're building. I get to serve our team. Our team loves us, and we love our team as well. They're all over the world. We're talking about how we can't wait to get together, like Sumner has. That's amazing. You get to impact people on a daily basis and grow around everybody that you're building a business around. And that's so, so valuable. Now, what do you need to be able to do as an integrator? You got to show up. You have to show up. I put these 3 together: disciplined, consistent, and team-oriented, because that's the most important part. Showing up every day and just being loyal. I love this fucking man right here, right? I'm loyal to him. He knows that. We got something deep. We got brotherhood. That means something. That makes doing business a whole lot easier. We don't have to worry about the other shit. You have to be calm. You have to be driven. You have to be punctual. And you have to want to be a leader. Like I've said many times throughout this presentation, it is a privilege to be an integrator. It is not a gift. It is a privilege, and I think about that every day. And we have to be unflappable as business leaders. We are at the top. We are the leaders. If anything's going wrong, it doesn't faze us. That's just business. That's the game we get to play. And that's a privilege. Oh, man, pitfalls. I'm a type 1 Enneagram. Everybody here should take the Enneagram test if you haven't taken it already. So I'm a perfectionist. So I'd rather not talk about pitfalls at all. I love to talk about all the rosy shit. But alas, we must also talk about this stuff. Moving too slowly. Ajay comes to me with many ideas, and 99% of the ideas I say no to. But there's also that 1% that needs to be said yes to. And when I do say yes, it needs to be implemented immediately. Not, oh, yeah, we'll get that done. No, it has to get done. And I like to say that I have a done list. I don't have a to-do list. I have a done list because I get shit done. But there's also a pitfall in wanting to keep things the same and being averse to change. And that's something that an integrator has to be aware of, because you build these beautiful systems that you don't want to change. But how are you going to grow if you don't change those damn systems, right? So we have to change the systems in order to grow the team and grow our abilities as business people. Rejecting the idea before hearing the whole story. This is something I love to do because I'd rather just get to the know early than later. But alas, as an integrator, you have to listen. You have to not only be a partner, but also a friend because at the end of the day, we are people, and we need to be humans to one another as we are building these businesses. Now, communication, it's very important to have very regular cadences between the integrator and the visionary, and we have to be as friendly to our visionaries as possible because they don't love recurring meetings, but that's okay because we love them for it. So, when we can get them on our calendars, we have those times. We have 5 recurring meetings between me and Ajay each week. They are the weekly Rocks meeting, which is your priorities for the week. They are marketing, they are sales, stoplight meeting, and a team meeting, of course. Oh, I put them in. Let's go. Let's go. Okay, and finally, open and honest communication. We were having our quarterly planning session, me and Ajay, in a Starbucks in Frisco, Texas. And we were talking about the quarterly goals for our business. And we wanted to reach a certain number. And towards the end, I could feel this thing in my heart. And I was like, what am I feeling? And I told Ajay, I was like, we talked about all these numbers, and what I'm telling myself is that I have to make sure that we get there myself. And now that was irrational, right? But that was my perception, right? And I had to call that out to Ajay. He didn't tell me that. It's just I felt that I had put the pressure on myself to be that, to make sure that I single-handedly made sure that we accomplished those numbers because I lead the day-to-day operations, because I make sure that I hold our team accountable, because I make sure that if things don't get done, I find a way to get them done. So I said, okay, that's all on me. But that was just in my head. But I had to let Ajay know that was in my head, because he's not in my head. He's in his own head. He's got enough ideas to deal with, right? So I had to let him know, but that hurt. That took courage. I had to get through that wall to tell Ajay, because I was scared to say that shit. Because I was like, that's me kind of saying I'm not good enough to do this. But you know what we did? I told Ajay that, and he said, great, let's invite our team into this. And that's what we did. We brought it to a full team meeting that we'd never done before, saying, hey, team, this is a conversation we had. What do you guys think about these numbers? Can we make this happen? So then from there, it changed from a me metric to a team metric. So then it was a collective effort as opposed to just a Ben effort. And that felt like the weight of the world coming off my shoulders. But it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't been honest and open with Ajay. So we're going to kind of split this a bit between me and Ajay. So I'll talk first about why the integrator needs to do this stuff. So the integrator has to sacrifice thinking about the future of the business in order to execute on the current state of the business. Now, it's going to feel a little weird for integrators to have to accept this, because that's what you think as a business owner. You always have to be thinking about the future of the business. So it's a bit of a sacrifice. But the more you focus on the present, the better it gets. The results come from where your focus lies. So by being an effective integrator, you rely on your visionary, but the visionary can handle it. They love that shit. They want to be doing that all day long, right? And it's okay as an integrator to sacrifice the future, because you can make a really kick-ass present, and the visionary will be very grateful for you doing that.
That was so good, Ben. That was so good. We as visionaries love to solve problems. Like I said, it is both a pro and a con. Pro, because we can solve some shit. Con, because we'll go looking for it if we don't have enough, right? I was talking to Matt Carosa, actually. We were in line a little bit ago, and he was telling me, this quarter we're trying to dial in some of these follow-up processes, and so we're going to scale back marketing. I hope it's okay that I'm sharing this. And I said, no, you're not. That's what you should not be doing right now. Scale up your marketing, and I'll send you a Loom video on some process. What do you need help with, buddy? Here's my number right now. Text me after the event. I'll get you a 15-minute Loom video. You'll be done. You'll be good, right? And it is one of those things where sometimes Ben has this really good expression he says, and I always butcher all his sayings. He's got so many good ones. Sometimes you need to step out of the trees to see the forest, right? And so that's what we as visionaries need to do, is lift up our team out of those trees. so you can see the force, you can see the bigger picture. I'm going to share a funny story. Can I share the Hidalgo property? Okay, so Ben and his issues. So Ben, being a fantastic integrator and day-to-day operator, didn't let me know of some problems that were going on right away necessarily. We had a closing that was pushed back twice, okay? And the buyer says, hey, I am not going to extend a third time. If we don't get this closed, we're done. And I was like, well, shit, I don't like losing money, so what's going on? So immediately I pop in. I'm like, all right, what's the scene? What's the issue? Give me some problems. And he's like, oh, well, we need a survey, right, for the property. I'm like, all right, did we call a surveyor? Yeah, actually, title's been talking to a surveyor. And I said, red flag. You never let your title company be your transaction coordinator, right? Now, there were some process issues we had that I could have another conversation about. We had some staff move around, some maternity leave, so our transaction coordinator had to fill in some other roles, which is why we had a gap in the process. All that being said, nobody was transacting coordinating. Our title company was. And if anybody's led a title company do some transaction coordination, you've lost deals, I guarantee it. Jerry's nodding his head in the back. We've talked about this at length. It is a quick way to lose money, guys. And so I said, what is the issue? We can't get a survey. Give me the surveyor's phone number, right? Here's what we need to do. Call the surveyor, figure out what the bottleneck is. Bottleneck is they can't get through a gate. Gate's not locked. He says he won't do it. Tear the gate down. We don't own the property yet. I don't care because we're taking title to the property. So tear the gate down. How do we do that? Post an ad on Craigslist. Pay people in advance. Pay 3 people in advance. I promise it'll be gone by the end of the day. Now, I had 3 back-to-back meetings after that. Popped into some. They were not recurring for anyone that's curious. Popped into those meetings. Came back out. Ben says, we just got a picture. Guess what? No more fence because he's a fantastic day-to-day operator and got that shit done. However, fun fact, there was a cow on the 7,000 square foot infill lot. And so I said, did we just let a cow loose in Hidalgo County, Texas? And he said, I don't know. And so we find out it's tied up. It's the neighbors, fun fact. And so anyways, this gentleman passes the phone to the neighbor who doesn't speak English, so has to give it to a brother. Anyways, long story here. We got the deal closed. Time, I'm so sorry. Sumner, we're going to go a couple minutes over. Is that okay? All right. So real quick, we're going to talk about if you don't have one and you're looking for one, tactical stuff, how to find your visionary, all right? Now, here's the thing, is visionaries, we like being the faces, right? And so if you need a visionary, it means you're an integrator, right? And if you're an integrator, get out and meet the people, okay? You need to go places. And now, it's not necessarily introvert versus extrovert for visionary integrator, but we do see some commonalities there. You got to get outside of your comfort zone and do some stuff that like makes your heartbeat pump up, gets your palms kind of sweaty, talk to some people on your way out of your depth zone, right? But you need to be comfortable getting out, meeting some folks, and like Marlon said, cast your vision of here's what I'm looking for. Hey guys, I have this business and I want it to grow, and to do that, I need yada, yada, yada. Right, Marlon? All right, so often you're going to find those folks at big events. Ben's going to talk a little bit at some of those that you can find them. But typically, these folks want to be around other big thinkers. So there's some pitfalls there in terms of if they only want to be around other big thinkers, only want to talk to other big thinkers, see how there's some friction there, right? I can't tell you how many conversations Ben and I have had at a conference where I walk up to a guy and we're talking about process until my eyes fall out of my head. And I'm like, I just don't care. Can we talk about like big stuff, like cool stuff, like taking cows off infill lots? You know. But there's some tactics on how to find a visionary. Ben, you want to talk about integrators?
Yeah, so integrators, like I said, are behind the scenes. So a lot of integrators you're going to find just haven't made the entrepreneurial jump yet, right? So maybe you have some friends that could be good integrators. We learned a lot of this stuff from the book Rocket Fuel, which is one in the Traction series, and they have an assessment. So if you have friends who are really interested in your business and who ask you a lot of questions about your business, you could give them this test from Rocket Fuel and tell them, hey, take this test, and then to see if they might be a good fit to be your complement on the other side of the partnership. So that's where we learned a lot of it. And yeah, you also find a lot of these people at like Bigger Pockets events, Grant Cardone events, Gary Vee events, right? It's more the general business because they haven't found their niche yet. Visionaries are really good at finding the niches because the riches are in the niches, right? And that's where the visionaries want to make the money. So hopefully that's helpful. But we just want to thank Sumner for bringing us up here. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having us. It's been a wonderful event. Thank you, everyone.